Hello again. Now I would like to invite Ercin, a co-founder and co-CEO of Lidya, which is a financial services platform that is designed to improve access to credit and finance across fast-growing economies. And he will talk about how Fintech can help SMEs recover from the impact of COVID-19. He will be associated by Piraiee, the director of Startup Grind Warsaw. So please come join us on stage. Yeah.
So thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thanks a lot for having me, Ahmet.
Maybe we can start by just introducing yourself.
Sure. Also, just to give the context for the audience as well. So I was basically like the CEO of Jumia Africa. And Jumia is the largest e-commerce platform in Africa. And that's how I met my business partner, Tunde. And he's the co-founding CEO of Jumia Nigeria. And basically, we enabled like e-commerce in Africa at scale. And that allowed us to work with a lot of small and medium businesses. And what we realized is at that point in time, this was 7 years ago, we also launched the largest e-commerce logistics platform, consumer logistics platform in Nigeria, because the biggest bottleneck was to get the items to the hands of the consumer. And 4 years ago, we launched Lidya, which is I'm the co-founder and the co-CEO of the business, together with Tunde. And because of the fact that we work a lot with small and medium businesses, and what we realize is the biggest bottleneck for them to get to the next level is access to finance. And therefore, like we said, in 21st century, we can just use data without taking any guarantor or collateral and give access finance to them for them to unlock the next potential and create more jobs.
Very, let's just say, futuristic in that sense. But when do you start your business before the COVID situation?
Yes, so basically it was very interesting because we've been financing a lot of businesses that we interact in our day-to-day life. These are pharmacies, hospitals, logistics companies, hotels, restaurants, coffee shops, gyms and beauty salons, and construction companies. And one thing that we did is we basically also expanded to Poland and Czech Republic, because what we want to do is we would like to scale the business and be a positive catalyst in the ecosystem, in the economies that we participate, and we focus on fast-growing economies. These are frontier emerging markets, and as well as like fast-growing developed markets like Poland and Czech Republic. So we launched in Czech Republic in March, and in April this year in Poland, which is in the middle of the lockdown. And of course, that was like quite tricky times, like in terms of that. But what we also saw is like basically small and medium businesses, as the pandemic get a hold of the market, like and start to affect the economy, they started to basically have very limited access, which they already had very limited access, but even further limited access to the financial markets. So therefore, like our basically like a solution and what we wanted to do in the markets that we participate is how can we get them enough working capital so they can basically get trade better, or also like they can also withstand the economical shocks better as well. So it's like a large value credit card style, and it was really helpful. We saw like a lot of these like businesses that I mentioned to be able to like withstand the shock much better and have a better cushion. And of course, the government like incentives support system also helped them further as well. So therefore, like now they are much stronger like than they used to be like a few months ago. And this is like what we would like to do, and also part of today's discussion as well, like to touch base on how can we basically help small and medium businesses in all the economies to create more jobs and get to the next level.
Let's try to be a bit more practical, because during the whole pandemic, there were lots of different government packages from different countries. Some of them were much smaller, some of them were bigger, but at the same time, you as a private sector also try to support them. Let's just say, as a practical way right now, if we have somebody that is somehow related to this ecosystem, how do they have to address you, and how would be the procedure? How do you really foresee that?
So on that one, what we see is like there's usually, when it comes to like the economy or any businesses, there is no silver bullet. But like what is really important is how do you basically enable like businesses to be able to focus on what they do best, right? Like in that way, finance is a very big enabler. Like, and what we saw is, of course, like the banks, the government, and like alternative finance companies or fintechs like us, it can all play their own part. So in that way, the government part is very important as well, because it creates the foundation, framework, and set the regulation, set the interest rates even, like which enables like a great playing ground for all the other private players. And in addition to that, the banks are a very good fit for like a capital expenditure kind of financing for these businesses, because like they're usually like requires a collateral and is long-term financing and cost of capital is right. But where we come in is what we realize is, especially as the economies try to get more digital, because that is also another thing that started beginning of this like century for the most part, like a lot of now services and products like the consumers and businesses started to access through basically digital means. The COVID situation, like I say personally, like one of the maybe only things that came out of this COVID as positive is like it accelerated the digitization of the economy and how people access to products and services much further. And that being said, like in that way, there was a need to be able to also unlock on the financial side as well, especially for the business angle. How can you get access to these companies without even seeing them in person? Because like that was also another big challenge physically, because for example, like only 5% of the customers are in Warsaw and in Prague. The rest of our customers, 95%, are rest of the country, and we never get to meet them in person. We all handle digitally, and that was a process that especially became very crucial, especially in the lockdown period, because like you cannot meet them in person. So those are the innovations that allow these businesses also to nurture to the next level. They innovate as well on their side, but also finance as well finds better ways to deploy the capital in a more effective and efficient way, which reduces the cost of borrowing to them also.
I think it's much easier just to talk about which sectors got hit worse by COVID, but which geolocations do you think got hit worse by COVID?
From geolocation point of view, I mean, one thing is like we operate now in 3 markets. So this is like Africa and Europe. And within that, like we saw, of course, different like type of reactions from even from the different players of governments, like private sector, and also the market dynamics. So in that regard, Europe has like a lot of infrastructure in place, like the talent, healthcare, education system, and that made it like, and also a very strong balance sheet as well on the government side that allowed it to have like a smoother transition, like compared to other parts of the world. But that being said, Africa, for example, has the youngest population in the world. So therefore, people are very much like much easier to adapt to like new technologies, like new means, and they are also like very much like developing their nations as well. So therefore, like we saw on the private sector, much faster adaptation to the new market realities from accessing to digital services, digital products. So that is like the differences that we see. But in terms of the fundamentals of the small and medium businesses are the bedrock of any economy that create the most number of like jobs in any economy and create the significant portion of the GDP. That holds true for all the markets. So just the way to unlock is like where it becomes like different from different geopolitical environments.
Another thing that I would say it's an indicator is for a while in some countries the whole economy was closed. So how do you really see the chain of the whole logistics is somehow, first of all, operating right now? And what would you think would be the future state of the logistics?
No, in that regard, like of course, like the health experts, like there are a lot of like scientists, like health experts to like guide the governments on what is the best for the society. Like from economic point of view, of course, the businesses that are in the service sector got very much affected. But innovation on the like in that way, it also accelerated. How can we now like reach out to our customers, right? Like of course, this was a very tricky like financial crisis, because it not only affected, usually in most financial crises, either the crisis happened on the supply or on the demand, but in the case of this pandemic, the crisis happened both on the supply and the demand side. And therefore, like, what it created is, like, even you find innovative models to get to your customers, you still have less of like a market, like size. But that being said, like with the also other innovative models coming in with Uber Eats, like basically like delivery models, like as well as like digital commerce, Amazon or Allegro in the case of Poland, like and also businesses like Lidya, like what we saw is like it also accelerated on the demand side the digital adoption of the customers, because now what we see is with smartphones, with internet data being available, like even people were using more to access to information. Now it accelerated the access to services and products as well, and that enabled also like a new digital transformation. I think the benefits of this, we will see it in the coming years. It won't be very visible for the next couple of years. Unfortunately, the world economy is going to enter into recession, so therefore like there will be like a decline in the GDPs, a good amount of the markets, but in our personal experience, like what we expect is like innovative business models will be coming up, like because if you look at the crisis, a lot of like great business models like were founded in the crisis times, and then it accelerates when the markets boom again. We personally expect the history will repeat itself in that way, and the winners of this 21st century or after this pandemic will be more digital adapted, like small and medium businesses or like up and coming high growth startups.
One thing I like is sometimes, maybe I'm playing with words a bit, but I really like this term that they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Because I would say in 2018, by the way, if you tweet something, it definitely is, is out there. So I literally said, like, if this market is not going to crash in 2018, there's something wrong somewhere. 2018 happened, 2019 happened, all the problems, even let's just say post the US election and everything, and now 2020. COVID happened, some stocks went like unbelievable low, still we didn't see a recession. Where do you see this resistance against the recession? And is it a bubble that is getting bigger, or the market is getting more resilient?
No, it's a very interesting point. I mean, this was like one of the longest positive business cycles in that way, as you pointed out. Usually it's like an 8-year cycle, but this was much longer than 8 years. Like that being said, like also to your point, the history repeats itself. So there's always like a turn, like the durations may change or maybe extended or shortened. But that being said, like still the logic still follows the same way. But overall, like the crisis of the previous one was really like different way, like which was like the asset pricing bubble and created like a banking crisis which affected the supply side rather than the demand side. But as we were just talking about the demand side in this one, I think it will change, also alter the behavior of like how people interact with each other. Also there will be social transformation as well. I think the old normal, we'll see, like will we ever go back to that, or will the new normal will be the like basically the old normal for the next generations. But that is the part of like what we see in businesses as well as the humankind, like which is I think one of our biggest strengths is the ability to adapt. I think there was also a good saying from like Toyota times, like because I worked for Toyota in the past, like the leadership always says like is not the strongest that survive, is the one that is able to change, like because you need this agility to be able to adjust to the new conditions. And even if we see in the automotive sector as well, like things have changed so fast in the last like 10 years. And those are the things like what we expect as well from economy point of view. For the fintechs, like we will see like they will play the part to be able to deploy the capital better, but also it will be coming from the SME or small and medium-sized businesses as well as large enterprises, even the incumbent banks as well. They all all will innovate, and the pace of innovation will, of course, differ from company to company, market to market. But what we see also in Poland and Czech Republic is, especially in Poland, is a very entrepreneurial culture. So in that way, I came here 10 years ago for the first time, and I was quite amazed with the potential. But after 10 years, they managed to capture the potential. So that was very amazing, actually. And now we see a lot of small and medium businesses, both in Poland and Czech, and as well as Nigeria, that are shaping the economy to get to the next level. They are the ones that are really driving the market. And that being said, the digital ones are what we also see is accelerating much faster compared to the more brick and mortar strategies.
One of the topics that I would say is at the same time controversial, and to some extent also it's kind of strange that why it's not happening. There was this interview that it was kind of to my mind, that the whole idea was, what is going to happen to the future of job when people are just going to have all of the money that they can have by those economic packages and everything? So what do you think is going to be the future of universal basic income to some extent?
On the jobs and the universal income, right? That is the one part that is a very interesting point, because to be honest, with all the robotics, automation, and technology coming in, AI as well, there is one thing that Jack Ma said, right? If you try to compete with the machines from education system point of view, the machines will always win. So where we can really invest in the next generation is I think the things that machines or AI is not capable of to do yet, right? And there was always the fear, when even in 19th century steam engine came to existence, people thought there will be no need for human beings anymore. But there's always new jobs that come up, even despite the fact that the population is almost 8 times bigger than when it was at that time. There is enough jobs. But of course, that doesn't mean history will always repeat itself, to that regard. I think the areas that we will need to do is that's why the OpenAI technology, which Elon Musk and is also co-founded as well, plays a very interesting role, how to think about AI, how to think about robotics. But what we see is as a trend, as part of also which enables also more small and medium businesses to come to existence, is easier to create a business now, because before you need to open a physical store, you have to come up with the rent, you have to decorate that place. But in today's world, you can basically just spend a day with tools that enable you to create a storefront, and you can create it with very limited upfront capital, and with good know-how, but still limited upfront capital. Use digital marketing tools, use basically social media, and even brick and mortar word of the mouth strategies. There's no silver bullet in these things to be able to unlock the potential for your business, and that is very good, because you will see many more entrepreneurs coming into the ecosystem, starting their own business and doing also more freelance. So that way the thing might change. What we used to in terms of office brick and mortar jobs, it may evolve to the next level.
To some extent, there was these paintings in the late 1800s, in the beginning of 1900, and they were asking some artists how to draw the year 2000. And that was the beginning of the trains and railways. So in all of those paintings in the year 2000, there were railways under the water, there were basically railways everywhere, because they were thinking, because right now railways are the biggest thing. So in the year 2000, everything is going to be 10,000 times better than the current railways. But the reality showed that that was not really the future. So that's also some of the way that we somehow paint the future as a better version of what we have right now, while the future sometimes have the technology of itself that doesn't exist. That's why our brain doesn't really go that far. Just to put it into perspective of what you're mentioning about the digitalization and the current situation of COVID, because when we had the recession, that was a 9/11 base, if you call it like that. That was one time off, and then it was over. But COVID is gradually happening. So that being said, how do you really feel that the future is going to go, based on the fact that we might just have some problems that we cannot foresee right now? Just as somehow wrapping up the whole conversation at the same time.
No, it's very interesting. I mean, on that one, we are living in a very interesting generational shift. Our parents are brick and mortar generation. We are like brick and click. And our kids will be click generation. So that way, to look at it is in that way, how do you also build services and products that can cater to all, right? Because people still we are social creatures as well as human beings. So therefore, people want to interact with us. But that interaction can be in different ways. Can be digital, can be physical. I think those technologies enable us to connect better with people around the world. And as we also get more global, we have network around the world, and it's much tougher to travel physically all the time. But in today's world, it's much easier to catch up with friends and family. So and same way in the businesses as well. The ones that succeed are the ones that can basically see this society changes and can basically provide the products or services that meets with the demands of the society.
Thank you very much, Ercin. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And it was a great panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's
Thank
a pleasure.